Continuing with our study of Parshat Noach, we're in the section on Noach, page 138, Bereshit Yud Aleph, Yud Daled, Genesis 11, verse 14. We are continuing to count the generations from Noah after the flood, and if you will recall, and it's a little while since we've been doing this, so recalling is a little bit difficult. If you'll recall, nonetheless, those of you who are watching it on tape probably just watched the last one, and now you're watching this one. I don't know why I'm saying this. In any case, the way that the notes define the words is very different from the way that we feel the story evolved after the flood. We sort of have this general sense of a devolving world, a world in which spiritualism is going out of the world, with further and further separation from Noach and the flood. And what we have done with at least the first two sons, as we defined their lives, is saying that they both continued to learn traditions from their father, at least along the line of Shem, and that they added spirituality with each generation and added their own teachings and learnings. So we're going to continue with Vishelach. This is a mercha, so this is lightly connected to what's gone on before, but mostly going to sweep us forward into what's going to go on afterwards. Shelach was multilaterally indoctrinated by his father, and Shelach matured early and developed his own views and concepts, as indicated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Shelach has a light connection to what he's gotten from his father and his grandfather and so on, but mostly he's going to move forward into what he's going to develop himself. Chai lived, and I want to comment here again. What we have is we have a series of sentences with almost exactly the same note groupings, and yet we're learning different things from them. So I do want to make everybody aware of that. Chai, number 2, when he lived together with his father, Shelach had the confidence in his ability to be able to conduct an independent existence and provide his own requirements for maintenance, as shown by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So the fact that he lived, and this closes off the thought, tells us that he has the ability to gain independence of thought and influence from what had come from before. So by closing off the thought with a tipcha, with a slight pause after it, that shows that he has both inculcated things from before and also gained independence because he's got that little pause after the tipcha. Shloshim, 30, with a munach. So this is going to demarcate sharply from what's come from before and mostly push us forward. When Shelach reached 30, he started his own family and established his own home, as stressed by the shape of the related reading mark. So this independence is further fostered by the fact that we have this munach, which sharply separates him from what he's been trained up until now and allows him to define things going further on, making his own household. Shana, with the stabilizing etnachta, year, number 4. From that time on, each year contributed to the count of his personal life, as denoted by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. Not quite sure the significance of this comment, other than to say we've given a definition to year, and we're saying that each year is a further contribution, which is again a Torah concept of how we are supposed to live our own lives, especially now that we're in the Omer. We have to realize that each day you're adding on and adding on and adding on, and that is, I suppose, where we see the stability of the etnachta coming into the word year. Vayoled, with a tipcha, this is going to refer us backwards and pause slightly afterwards, and he produced, number 5. At the height of his potential and vigor of youth, he married and he produced a son to whom Shem devoted all his energy. as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So what we're going to do is we're going to take everything that he got from his father and then gained independence and made by himself, built year upon year upon year, and he's going to give that to the son who he's born with the tipcha, with the note focusing backwards on all of those things that we just said. Et Aver, with Aver, number 6, with the stabilizing sof pasuk. Moreover, because of the insignificant age difference between father and his son, there were hardly any discrepancies with Aver that could not be peacefully and reasonably brought to a mutual understanding. Got a question or comment?
No, I just tried to think of insignificant age difference?
30 years.
To us that might be a lot, but then when they're living 800-900 years,
Yeah.
So I mean, the big example is Noach, who waited 500 years to have children.
Right.
So again.
Sorry, could I ask, in number 2,
Mm-hmm.
It talks about his confidence in his ability to be able to conduct an independent existence of his father, as denoted by the backward shape, the closing shape of the reading mark. In number 5, he produced a son and the shape of the reading mark brings everything from the past and kind of elevates it up to the next generation. So I don't understand how that's derived in number 2, that he was able to be independent. It looks like...
Because the tipcha has a slight pause after it. So he's going to bring... So the definition of a tipcha is it is a closing note that is a minor king, that is a note that defines itself by having a slight pause after it. So the rules of influencing beged kefet and so on, the rules of influencing grammar afterwards, are broken by this pause. So this is where we're defining the independence by the actual characteristics of the note.
The pause after the note.
The pause after the note.
Whereas in number 5, it's the shape
closing,
of the note?
It's a closing shape.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's going to connect to everything that's from before it.
Yeah.
So he's going to inculcate everything from his father. And it's got the pause, so it's going to say that he got all that stuff, and then he was able to be independent.
And that's
so both of those things are there in number 2. Similarly, in number 5, by Yoled, he took all of those things all together, and, pause, let Aver have what Aver was going to become.
Thanks.
So we'll read the pasuk out loud again, overemphasizing the pauses. V'shelach chai shloshim shana vayoled et Aver. And we're going to continue on to the other side of the page. Vayechi shelach with the revi'i. So this is going to focus and isolate this word and put emphasis on it. Shelach received extensive training and education by his father, which he found useful, and he lived Shelach by his own adjustments of practical and simple corrections, as indicated by the shape of the reading mark and the hemshech, and the continuation. So again, I wasn't quite sure what he meant here by the concept of hemshech. Revi'i is a note that has a long cantillation. It has many individual tones that are sounded in order to get it. So it is a drawn out note, and I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to, or whether he's just referring to the continuation of the pasuk after this. Nonetheless, this is a note that sort of makes this word stand alone with importance. Number 2, acharei, after, with a pashta. So this is going to slightly elevate the word, but lead us forward into what's going to go after. At first, Shelach abided fully by the views and principles of his father, After that, he became reliant on his own efficiency, and he deviated somewhat, adapting his own current approaches, as shown by the directional shape of the reading mark. So, again, the first note, the Revi'i, is he's standing alone. All of a sudden, he's starting to make his own decisions. And Acharei, everything that's going to happen afterwards, is going to be influenced by this choice to make his own adaptations, if you will. Holy dough, his producing with a munach. So this is going to separate us out from what's come from before and move us forward into what's going to go after. His producing the character of the firstborn son was an example of his own experience and of that which he received from his father, as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. And again, I'm not quite sure why we're drawing connections backwards with a note that clearly defines separation. Nonetheless, what he's giving forward is something that is new based on his own influence. Et Aver, with Aver, this is a katon. This is that two-part note. It might be a little bit difficult to see in the text, and if you want to correct that to a katon, to the two-part note. Number 4, he endeavored to establish with Aver an example for his family and a leader for society, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So what we're saying is what he has put into his son Aver was both tradition from before and the ability to lead and produce from the front as well. So he's given him both to follow and to lead, and that's why we get that two-part note. Shalosh, this is a munach, again, 3 separating itself out from what's come from before. Number 5, comparable to his father, the initial 3 years of his son's life, Shalach kept observing the natural tendencies of Aver in order to determine a plan for further guidance, as denoted accordingly by the shape of the reading mark. So the first 3 years, Shalach is watching in order to define what he's going to give to his son. And again, we ascribe levels of independence to a child and levels of responsibility to a child. And one of the first levels of responsibility happens at the age of 3. When the child is hopefully weaned and the child starts to have responsibilities of learning the alphabet and responsibilities of becoming somebody who can have some independence. So I think the number 3 is no accident that it happens here. But Shelach watches Aver for these first 3 years, and then he decides his plan after 3 years, so that the influence can go from there forward, separated out from the years of observation. Again, the sharply demarcated munach. Shanim, years, with again that twofold katon. So again, if it's a little difficult to see in your texts, that is that two-part note on years, number 6. Having established Aver's predispositions, Shelach exploited the following years for developing his own original approaches, as suggested by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So here we are starting to see deviation from the original thought that Noach had and passed on to Shem and so on, and trying to build on it. And now all of a sudden we've got somebody who is thinking independently and revising independently, and the years that Shelach is putting into Aver, he is now giving him both some of the previous approaches, but also some of his own original approaches, hence the two-part note. Ve'arba and 4. This is a mercha, so lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly pushing us forward into what's going to go after. Number 7. Further contributions to shape the personality of his firstborn son went on, and 4 centuries, he can 4 as in F-O-U-R, centuries, he continued his efforts as expressed by the directional shape of the reading mark.
So you're thinking what I'm thinking, it takes that long to raise a child.
Only if you want to do it properly.
If you want to do it properly.
That's what it feels
That's what our problem is. We didn't take 400 years.
So you start elementary school at 3, and you graduate at 400.
Imagine the tuition.
So again, likely connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving forward into what is going to go after. Me'ot, hundreds, number 8, with the closing tipcha. This is going to connect to what's come from before, and then pause slightly afterwards. During the hundreds of years, Shelach tried to shape his own life and that of the remaining family, as specified by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So we're talking now about Shelach's development, not necessarily about his influence of Aver, and we've widened the influence to not only include Aver, but to include all of the other generations who are all of the other children who are alive at this time. So he is trying to be an influential leader and to allow his personal interpretations and thoughts to start to really become the way of the world, if you will. And number 9, Shana, year, with the stabilizing at Nachtah. Each year he analyzed his achievements because to him it was not only a unit of time, but also a measure of accomplishment, as illustrated by the stabilizing shape of the related reading mark. So before, we were taking years and piling them up to be his contribution, and now this is a much more personal thing. This is his appreciation of his own accomplishments. So him seeing each year as, I've done more, I've done more, I've done more. So he is trying to set himself up as an authority and a paradigm. Vayoled, and he produced with a mercha, likely connected to what's come from before, but mostly sweeping us forward. And you'll notice the difference in the last pasuk. Vayoled had a tipcha, strongly connected to what was come from before, and here Vayoled with a light connection to what's come from before. So with regards to Aver, he's very strongly influencing. Here, the influence might not be as strong. Number 10, he tried to establish his principles on a solid foundation, and he produced more children, and he gave them necessary basic preparations for satisfactory conduct in life, as conveyed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So here, the influence is general and to the level of satisfactory because of the mercha, whereas in the last pasuk, in pasuk 14, the tipcha, vayoled at Aver, that tipcha is saying he's giving him strong influence and strong character traits and strong. So again, we have the light influence versus the strong influence, again being defined by the shape of the note. Banim with a tipcha, so this is going to close the thought and have a slight pause after it. Number 11, sons were properly prepared to be able to cope with various problems in life, as depicted by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So again, we are giving a strong definition to that pause that comes after the tipcha, in that we're saying the sons are gaining a measure of independence based on what he has given to them, and that independence again is defined by the pause after the tipcha, and the closing character of the tipcha is saying that they got what he gave them, the tipcha, closing, and then they gained independence with the pause. We got that two thoughts in a tipcha, a connection and a closing off or a separating out from. Uvanot, and daughters, with the stabilizing of pasuk. The sons were educated to be prominent men, and the daughters were instructed how to function properly during their future obligations. So the sons are given thoughts that make them influential but independent, and the daughters are given instructions that make them a source of stability, which fits the Kabbalistic concept of male and female. Male is infinite giving without necessarily the ability to sustain anything, and the ideal female characteristic is taking a small spark and allowing it to have the ability to continue and to persist and to grow, but taking a single or a very small number of ideas and allowing them to be what continues. Each of us has some male and some female in it, so none of us are pure male, pure female, but the concepts are brought into the world so that we can understand both ideas. And we were talking before, again, there is a very strong element of the biological in the projection of spiritual into the material world. So the concepts of male and female, both reproductively, millions and millions of sperm and only one egg, and the female trying to select one and keeping that alive, and the male contributing and contributing and contributing, but ultimately all of those could be wasted, fits the concept of what we're trying to say here. You've got Banim who've got all of these influences coming at them, and they're trying to become influential, but they won't necessarily succeed. And you have Banot who are given the concept of trying to select among these and make the one that's going to be the one that does get permanence, that does get the sof pasuk, that gets the stabilizing influence.
You would think there would be an etnacha under.
Etnachta and sof pasuk have the same function, right? They're both stabilizing ending notes.
But I don't see anything under the one
Under which?
Uvnot.
Uvanot. So there's nothing at the sof pasuk. There actually should be a straight line down under the Uvanot. No, under the nun of the vav, under the nun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so there is something
there. So yeah, that should be there. So we're going to read through the sentence, and we're going to notice that Acharei Holidot Ever is one phrase, so that's the first part of his life. Shalosh Shanim is the planning, what he's going to do with Ever. The Arba Meot Shana, again, the next Meot, is going to stand alone. That is all of these hundreds of years, and the hundreds of years are not only spent influencing Aver, but trying to influence the rest of the generation. And then the word Shana, year, is going to stand there alone because he's counting each year as a separate achievement. Vayoled Banim, he's going to have Banim, and again, the Banim are going to be very separate in terms of what they're given and what they're trying to do from the Banot. So again, we get a pause after that Tipcha, and again, we're going to read more strongly emphasizing the pauses than we should. Vayechi shehelach acharei holido et ever. Sorry, I just want to make one more. So again, when we said with the Rivi'i on Shelach that it has some influence because of its hemshech, the question is that because of just what we've written in the rest of the sentence, which is one possibility of what he means by hemshech, or is it because Rivi'i is just a long note? So I'll again ask you to listen to the Rivi'i and see why it's defined as a long note, as something that has a continuance to it.
Well, there's also four syllables.
Just before we sing it, could it also refer to just the hyphen, Vayechi Shelach, that there's that That
No,
Yes, so
whenever
this
we
is
have
for-
two words that have only one note, you'll notice that there is a connection between them. So just look back at the last pasuk. Et Aver. There's always one of those when you have more than one word with only one note. So again, look at the next sentence on the next page. Vayechi Aver. Again, two words, one note, and there's that connecting thing. And the end, number 6 for 11:16. Et Peleg. Again, when you have more than one word that has only one note, the two of them get a connection in between them. And that's because they only have one note to them. And that again is one of the defining characteristics of this Perush, that each word group has a paragraph of explanation assigned to it, because these word groupings are connected. And we'll try singing it again. This time, again, pay attention to how long the Revi'i is. Altogether. Vayechi Shelach Acharei holido et Ever Shalosh Shanim V'arba Meot Shana Vayoled Banim Uvanot. Again, lots of pauses. So all of a sudden, some of those things that we said make a lot more sense when you overemphasize the pausing. We are on page 139, and
Now,
we have a
why
question.
are they going through? Why is it going through so much description of Shelach and Aver when it seems to be a normal father-son family relation? There's a lot of emphasis on this for a reason.
So
it seems
part
to
of
be
that.
normal. You have a son, you teach him the family traditions, you teach him some of the new things you've come across. Why is there so much focus on this particular?
Part of this is the concept of a generational leader. You are grooming somebody new who is going to have a period in which he becomes the main influencer. Maybe I'm going to get everybody to turn to the chart, which is on page 148 and 149. And what we're going to look at here is we're going to look at the years after the flood, when each person lived until, in hundreds of years, when they had their first child, and how long they lived. And you'll notice that they're all there to influence multiple generations after them. So by the time you get to you get to Avram, you notice that most of these predecessors, with 3 exceptions, are still alive. So, and you notice the little circles that show how old they are when they have their first child. And again, the defining characteristic of how long that child is there to remain influencing the rest of the world is very significant. Okay, so I'll let that sort of sink in for a minute.
I don't know the charts there.
And then we will go back.
So the total life here, like Noah 600 plus 1 plus 350.
Right, so he lived 600 years before the flood, plus the 1 year of the flood, plus 350 years after the flood. So that's why that calculation is made.
So we go down, let's say, to Peleg. So
We go down to Peleg, and why is he adding the numbers? No. Well, it's the number of years until he's had a child.
yeah, that's what I.
So what's the 1 for Noah?
Probably the one of the flood. I mean, I think he's the only one who had the.
Okay, so then why does Shem not have that 1 in him?
Yeah, because he was there.
Well, he was 600 when the flood happened, and he lived 350 years after the flood, and in the year of the flood.
But then
Is
why
that
does
how-
Why
why does
does
Shem
Shem have
why does
one?
Shem not have a 1?
I guess my point is, when the Torah records his age, does it say he lived for this many years before the flood, this many years after the flood? I mean, there's a period of, in other words, there's boundaries on either side of it, but there's
Yeah, but
also
Noah
the
and
middle.
Shem should have the same thing, because he was,
No, I understand. My point is, I don't remember the specifics, but in referring to the length of Noah's life, it says that he was 600 when the flood happened,
yeah,
and then he lived after the flood another 300 and whatever
right.
years. But
But
I
then
mean,
why
that
wouldn't-
doesn't include the 1 year of the flood,
Right, but why wouldn't Shem have the 1 year?
because perhaps the Torah says Shem lived this many years and 100 years until he had his child, and 500 years after his child.